Hey guys, so today we are starting a new journey. So I haven't made pasta from scratch since culinary school, which was almost 10 to 15 years now. And yeah, so it's been a while. So when it comes to making these noodles from scratch, I'm basically a noob. But anyway, with Adrienne loving her pastas and it being her birthday weekend, so make sure you say happy birthday to her in the comments. Yeah, I thought we would start this cool new series about, pasta. So our new pasta series, trying to learn or even relearn, for my case, our favorite noodles, from like ramen to vermicelli noodles to these famous Italian noodles, stuffed ones, different shapes and all kinds. So let us know in the comments also if you have a favorite pasta, because we definitely want to know, and also want some ideas of things of different pastas to learn too, because it's exciting. So for our first episode, I'm going back to culinary school, back to the basics, and learning the basic Italian egg pasta dough, I guess we can call it. I'm testing 3 recipes that I think were pretty well thought out, written. So the first one is basically a general guideline. What I found out there is that, people just go off of these simple ratios of 100 grams of flour to 1 egg. And that'll be the first recipe that we test. And then the second one is I'm going back to my culinary textbook, which is basically the same ratio of eggs and flour, with the addition of olive oil. And then the third recipe I'm testing is of Helen Rennie's channel on YouTube. She was, which by the way is a pretty good video. Her pasta making video was pretty good. So she kind of ripped on Samin Nosrat's her show, saying that making fun of her because Samin said pasta. There's cannot make pasta the same twice or something like that, because it's all feel, and you just got, it just depends on that day how that pasta is gonna come out, pretty much. But after she ripped on it, she then gave her, very reliable recipe. So we're gonna test that recipe, see how it goes up against my textbook, and then that general guideline of 100 grams of flour to 1 egg. So our first test was 100 grams of 00 flour to 1 large egg. It was very, very hard to work with. It was pretty dry. I had to add in more water into the mix just to get it to combine, and then from there it was still pretty hard to work with. For me, the problem with this is that a large egg can vary from country to country, even state to state, from egg to egg, from grocery to grocery. Like, a large egg is not the same as another large egg, and that kind of makes it dangerous when you're making this kind of thing. But I understand why, when people give this general guideline, that it is based off of feel. So if it feels dry, or if it feels really hard to work with or whatever, then you add a little bit of water at a time, incorporate it, and then go from there. That's pretty hard to do unless you're like a master pasta maker. That was the first test. It wasn't completely a dud. I kind of saved it, but I'm not happy with it. The next recipe we used was from my culinary school textbook. It was 450 grams of 00 flour, 4 eggs, and 30 milliliters of olive oil, with a sprinkle of kosher salt. That's what the ingredients list said, and that's what I did, and everything came together much easier than the general guideline of 100 to 1. It was easy to work with, which made me feel like it was sketchy because it was so easy, and but it came out really well, I think, as far as the process of making this dough. This dough came out softer in general. It was, I didn't have to add any more liquid to it. It wasn't completely dry, nor was it very, very wet. Our third recipe we tested was from Helen Rennie, and hers consisted of 150 grams of 00 flour, 2 teaspoons of diamond crystal kosher, and 185 grams of wet ingredients, which consisted of 2 large eggs, 3 large egg yolks, then enough water to get you to the 185 grams of total weight for wet ingredients. Now this came together much easier as well, just like the culinary school recipe did. I didn't have to add any more flour. I didn't have to add any more liquid to it either. It really did come together nicely. The only thing that I had trouble with this recipe was that it was slightly wetter than the culinary school one. My school recipe was a good balance of not being too wet or not being too dry. Like I didn't have to do anything. The Helen Rennie's recipe felt more on the wet side, but I wasn't compelled to add more flour to it. After resting all these doughs, we're just gonna have to try them all out, eat them, and see what you think. And there's no other person I think would be better to tell you how each pasta tastes or feels or whatever than the pasta girl herself, Adrienne.
Hey guys, resident noodle eater expert here. As Carl mentioned, we did 3 recipes, so I'm just gonna go over what I thought about those textures. The first one, the 100-to-1 ratio, did turn out, since the dough was dry, a little bit like weird, hard, like not in a chewy form, but like in a not so pleasant way in the mouth. So I guess there wasn't enough like elasticity or something like that. The other thing though, that we tested in the other 2 recipes is that we cut the culinary school book and Rennie's 2 different widths or thicknesses. So they had the pasta maker do, I guess that's the fettuccine, but to me it looks more like a linguine width. And then one that's even thinner than that, so think like the width of a spaghetti, but not necessarily round. That is something to keep in mind because, of course, the different width and the cook time that you do is going to also, of course, affect the end texture. The culinary school recipe with the wide noodle, sorry, the fettuccine size, I'll just call it that for now, was my favorite. And unfortunately, we didn't like time how long we cooked it for. We kind of just like, once it boiled and then like we ate it. And then once we like taste tested it and like when it was the desired texture, we took it out. So next time we should definitely time it. But that said, the wider noodle was the perfect texture in that it had a chew. So it wasn't like too hard or too soft. Whereas when we cut it thinner, it's possible we just happened to overcook it, but it just didn't have that same chew. Whereas Rennie's dough, when we cut it wide, it also didn't quite have a chew and it was a little bit hard, similar to the 100-to-1 ratio. So it didn't have that like nice, what do you call it? Chew. It didn't have that sort of like elasticity. But when you cut it in the thinner, almost spaghetti width, that one happened to have a pretty good texture, like better than the culinary school textbook at the same width. So we don't really have definitive answers, and I guess since we didn't quite control like the timing of the cooking, which is something we should do next time, it's not a perfect, apples to apples comparison. We will say that, like Rennie mentions in her video as well, the pasta dough you make is really going to depend on the application. So what kind of shape you want, how thick it's going to be, all of that's going to play a part in how you want your dough to turn out, like whether you want it to be a little bit drier, firmer, softer, more supple, more elastic, etc. All of these things. Hopefully this was a good first foray into the pasta making world for you guys. A little bit of a, beginner's stumbling and experience to help you guys kind of skip through that on your own take. If you guys have any tips or recipes you guys want us to try out for you guys, please let us know in the comments. Hop on scene to talk with us or any of the socials. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one and hopefully get a little bit farther along on our own pasta recipe. See you on the next one. Bye!